So Shudder dropped a new film, and this one's called The Devil's Bath. And this is from the directors of Goodnight Mommy as well as The Lodge. I was a massive fan of The Lodge. Wasn't a huge fan of Goodnight Mommy. I have not seen the TV show that they made on it. But maybe I will eventually. I don't know. I figured out the twist very early on, and that kind of hurt my experience. But I don't mind going back and giving things a shot once again. And after having seen The Lodge, which is a massive fan of, and this, it definitely makes me interested to go back and rewatch it. Maybe prompt me to watch the TV series finally. So now this one is set in like 1750, somewhere in that area, in Austria. And a woman, Agnes, marries a guy by the name of Wolf. And they kind of have like a loveless marriage. And because of this, and because of how she is treated in the community as like an outsider, because it's like his community and not hers, her life sucks. Yeah. And she's not enjoying her life.
She sure ain't.
And this gives her the Devil's Bath, which was a saying for like depression, basically, or
mental illness in some sort.
I was gonna say it's not hysteria,
Psychosis.
but there's another term for it. But anyway, so that's really all I can say. So I'm gonna say this up front. This is definitely not a film for everyone. Like, you know, we watch movies that we can recommend to a lot of people here and there. And then there's these films, these like slower burn indie horror films that have very, very, very little horror in them and are much more like stylistic and whatnot. So these are a little more difficult to review for like who this is aimed at. That being said, I thought this was fantastic. I think this is a really damn good movie. Horror, like that's, I don't know. That's such a semantical argument that I really don't like to get into. But is it horror? Not really, I guess. I mean, there's some. And this is a film I could talk about for quite a while. Because I think there's a lot to talk about here. But I really, really like the subject covered here. And this is based on true events. There's over like 400 cases between the 17th and 18th century in German-speaking countries alone with this. And I do want to talk spoilers, but after your thoughts, what did you think?
I really like this movie a lot. I think that the horror aspect, kind of the atmosphere and the tone of the film very much feels like a horror movie.
Absolutely.
So there is that, and there's definitely some horrific stuff that happens.
Super horrific.
But a good majority of the movie feels like a drama.
Absolutely.
Like a really dark drama. But I would say that like the ending, like the last act, is a horror movie. It feels like a horror movie to me. So, you know, I think it's, kind of a semantical argument, like you said. But I thought it was really great. I really loved the performance from the actress that plays Agnes. I think she gives a really, like, it's a subtle performance, but it's one of those performances that I think if you don't appreciate these kinds of movies, you'll think that nothing is happening. But I personally feel like she conveys like, there's not a lot of dialogue. I would say. And so this is a movie that relies a lot on the actor's ability to, emote with their facial expressions and some of their physicality as well. And I think that she does just a tremendous job at showing us who this woman is, who Agnes is, through very little dialogue. And I always think that that's a really hard thing for actors to accomplish. There's a lot of stuff that I like, cultural things that I did not understand.
Sure.
And that's not a fault of the movie or the writing or anything. I think that it's all probably historically accurate, if I had to guess, especially because it is based on true events. But I just was so like, what are they doing? Like, why are they doing that? Especially at the end. There's a very important sequence, like at the very end of the film, that we were both, I think, pretty shocked by and confused about, and we're just like, what is happening? And then there's a few other parts of that aspect throughout. So yeah, I thought it was great. I as you already said, though, it's definitely not a movie for everyone. There will be people that will absolutely hate this.
So if I was to compare this, and to piggyback off what you said here, this is arguably my favorite female performance of the year. I think the woman who plays Agnes in this is fantastic. And there's a laugh she gives towards the end that is one of the most manic laughs I've ever seen, and felt genuinely like someone who's completely lost their mind. But this movie, if I was to try to compare it to something that most people would understand, I would say take The Witch, take out almost all the supernatural stuff in The Witch, and it's pretty similar-ish there. If you were to throw in like some mental illness. So if you found The Witch boring and you thought not enough happened in that, it also reminded me of a movie we watched last year, You Will Be Alone, but I liked this way better. Was it You'll Be Alone?
I think it's You'll Never Be Alone.
You'll Never Be Alone, whatever, with Numi
Yeah.
Rapace. I always forget how to say her name. But that one bored the shit out of me. I found that one to be annoying and boring and
boring.
I said annoying and boring.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said boring and boring. And I was like, boring.
But yeah, this one really had me captivated because they play around with this idea that things might be supernatural, like witchcraft. And I'm still very on the fence about that. I don't think that's what's happening. But it's kind of left open, in my opinion, to a degree. But let's talk spoilers. But I before we get into spoilers, I definitely recommend this to people who like slow burn, period piece, foreign dramas with horror atmosphere and some really like I'll say some like trigger warning type moments for some people.
For sure.
Because when the movie goes for it, it's not like it's super graphic or anything. There's some graphic things for sure, but it's like the emotion and like the subject matter at hand that's being dealt with, and it is haunting.
Oh, yeah. I think that this movie probably should definitely come with a trigger warning. If you don't like watching children be hurt, like that's something to be aware of with this.
Brutal.
There's a couple in this that are very, very brutal.
Yeah.
So
spoilers, just because I want to talk about them. Because I think that this film definitely deserves... Probably could have made another video, but I'm just going to do it here, I guess. So when the movie ends, it talks about the 400 cases, and then I kind of read about it a little bit. I didn't get to read much about it because we just finished the film maybe 5-10 minutes ago. So I was like trying to read as fast as I could before we pressed record. But I didn't really gain anything new that the movie didn't tell me. So, you know, when we open up with this woman who grabs the baby, which is very The Witch, right? Like, you know, she's playing peekaboo and then the kid's missing and then we see the kid die and ground up into some freaking thing. In this movie, the girl just takes her and just tosses her off a tosses the kid off a waterfall.
It's so awful. And watching the kid like bounce off the rocks.
Yeah. And so she goes and confesses her sin, right? Her murder. And I was like, huh, interesting. And then, you know, they cut her head off and people are taking pieces of her.
Yeah.
And they like leave a piece of like a drawing, like this, what would you call that? Like a, not a pamphlet, but like...
It's like a flyer.
A flyer, yeah. That's a good way to put it. They like staple it to a tree, like next to the body.
Yeah.
Like telling some kind of a tale with it. And these people are very religious and superstitious. And, you know, they cut off like a finger and they gift it to them for their wedding.
Yeah.
And she like puts it under her bed and, you know, it absolutely suggests, it doesn't say it outright, but it very much suggests that her husband is homosexual.
Yeah.
And, you know, her whole purpose now in life is to bear children. That's like what she's supposed to do. And when she's whisked away to this like new town, it's not too far from where she used to live, but, you know, it's new to her. And this is like this little fishing village community. And she doesn't know anything about that. And she like, everyone there treats her like shit. And it's just like her life sucks so much. And this whole idea of being like deeply religious, which actually reminds me of this script that I wrote, Savior, which I think you read. But it's this like notion of, because they talk about it in the film where someone committed suicide. They come in, he's hung or he's hanged himself, and they you know, to go to church and they're like, this is a sin worse than murder because he can't absolve himself of his sins by confessing.
Yeah.
And so he's going to go to hell if he could have just like murdered someone and then confessed his sins and got absolved of those, and he'll go to heaven. And there's this like angelic nature to children. And as I'd said, like when I was reading about this and when it was, you know, they put it on the TV. So I don't think I gained anything, honestly, from reading. It was just the movie really told it very well. It's like you had these women who were just absolutely depressed out of their minds with the life, which can you blame them?
Right.
Right? Like you're just like property.
Yeah.
And it's like, get to work, and the mom is so terrible, and the husband doesn't want to have sex with her, and she's not going to bear children, and all she wants to do is that, and her life is like forfeit to her, and she's so depressed, but she doesn't want to kill herself, right? But she does try, right? So she like goes to her parents' house, and they like force her to come home, and when she does that, she takes rat poison and starts ingesting it, and she dies, but the guy's like, sorry, I had to bring her back. And so she's back, and then she decides, like, I guess I gotta go kill a kid,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, and she gets this kind of like inspiration from this other chick in town,
Yeah.
who did it, and now she's like, her body is being used for like fertility and who knows
Yeah,
what.
the combination of like the folk practices and the religious practices was what was really unsettling to me, because they're so, I mean, as you said, just superstitious and religious in so many ways, and that's like, it just dominates their whole life, which, I mean, it makes sense for this time period for a lot of different cultures to be that way, and this is just such a dark look at how that, you know, negatively impacts people. And I do not understand why they take body parts, and, you know, at the very end when she gets her head cut off, they like gather her blood and they're like selling it, and people are drinking it.
Crazy.
And I don't understand that aspect. That's what I was really confused on. It's like, so if she, but I don't know, maybe it's because, like, instead of, she's a murderer,
Yeah.
but, like, maybe it's because they all know that she wanted to kill herself and that's why she does this, and so it's like they're celebrating that she, didn't commit the worst sin. You know what I mean? I don't know.
So what I thought of when I saw that is Jeffrey Dahmer, who ate the pieces of his victims, because he wanted, like, them to be a part of him, right? Like he had this thing about abandonment, right? He had, like, really bad abandonment issues, and he didn't want these people to leave him, and if he consumed their flesh, they would, like, be a part of him and be with him forever. And I do wonder if, like, consuming her blood after she absolved herself of her sins and was, like, going to heaven, because that's what she does it for. I mean, that's what this movie outright says, and that's what the research that I did in 2 seconds, that's what happened. It's like these women, they didn't want to go to hell from killing themselves, so they kill children. They killed children because the children are still, like, angelic and sinless, and if they kill children, they send them to heaven, and then in doing so, they can go to the local church, turn themselves in, absolve themselves of their crimes, and then be murdered. So, like, they want to die.
Yeah.
See, like, this is a much worse version of just plain old suicide.
Oh my God,
right?
It's awful.
It's like, I gotta take a kid so that you'll kill me. So it's like nowadays, death by cop. It's like,
it's
death by murder.
Yeah, it's a very similar thing, and I think that the boy that she kills in this, that was definitely one of the more, like, brutal, intense death scenes I've ever seen. Especially because with kids, like, we've talked a lot about how, like, especially American cinema, like, kids are, like, never killed.
Plot armor.
Foreign cinema, you get a lot more child death, but a lot of the time it feels like it's meant to be shocking, but it's very quick and abrupt.
Yeah.
And with this one, like, him begging for his life and telling her to leave him alone, and just his screams and everything, it was like,
and he keeps trying to put
so
pressure
realistic
on his wound, because she stabs him in his artery, and she just keeps taking his hand away so he bleeds out.
It was hard.
His acting is fantastic.
It's fantastic. It was really hard to watch. It was really sad and scary, and just like, oh my God, like, that's totally how I would expect a child to act after getting, like, hurt and dying and being terrified, like,
and she thinks she's doing him a favor.
Oh yeah.
Like, she's like, oh, it's okay, like, we're both going to heaven, like, like, I hope I'm going to heaven, and that's why she's laughing in the end, is like she gets to now go to heaven when she wasn't, because she killed herself before with the rat poison.
I mean, this is definitely something that we've, like, talked about too with religion, and, like, because there's a lot of religious horror movies that sort of address this, and it is just kind of such a weird part of Christianity that it's like, you can kind of do whatever, and, like...
No, this is Catholicism.
Well, yeah, Christianity and Catholicism, but it's the same thing with Christianity, where, like, you can pray and get forgiveness from Jesus for anything.
Yeah, but in this you have to
absolved by... You have to get absolved by a priest, but anyway, it's very, like, okay, cool, so... no accountability for anything.
Oh my God.
You can kind of do whatever, and you're just good to go.
You have this, like, party where they're celebrating your death and drinking your blood and dancing and having the best time. Like, this should be a very somber occasion. Yeah. Imagine, like, going to watch an execution in the town square with your children.
Yeah, no.
And, like, she starts singing, which is really sad, and this kid's singing along with her. This is where I'm saying, so there's so many scenes in this where she, like, puts the finger under her bed of the woman before her, which makes me wonder, like, did that, because she had the finger, like, did that get the idea in her, or, like, the curse in her, or whatever. She has this, like, little altar in the basement, and she collects these, like, dead flies and dead bugs, and her husband gets rid of them, but she's, like, down there, and there's a scene where a butterfly, like, looks like it's born out of her mouth, I don't know if she like put it in there and then just spit it out, but it looked like she like gave birth to it. But she was also like, I think maybe taking rat poison at that point, so she was maybe hallucinating it.
Yeah.
So I don't really know like if how much of this movie is supposed to be taken as supernatural-ish, because this keeps happening in this town and they're like consuming the blood of people like this, and it's like it's crazy to me that people think that we're gonna kill people in front of you, we're all gonna drink their blood, and then what? We're just all gonna go back to normal, right? Like this isn't gonna teach kids that violence is okay.
It's just, it's such a different time. Like that's what's so weird about watching this. And you know, obviously, as with any historical movie or book or whatever, like I know that we have written, you know, documentation and stuff, but I do feel like obviously it's up to interpretation, like how people behaved, but it is just so bizarre to see this different time, because like we were even talking during the film, like this is a much simpler life than most people, especially in like the Western world, really ever know. And in some ways that's a really nice thing, because like, you know, they're connected to the land and to like the natural cycle of things, and it's a lot more like that simplicity I think is really good for humans. But on the other hand, because they don't have the like the information and the knowledge that we do now, the superstition and everything is so deadly. And I mean her having like those altars and stuff, I don't know, I definitely thought that there was going to be more of a push about witchcraft, but that was like never brought up really by anybody. And obviously what they're doing at the end is so like, it feels very pagan. It does not feel like something from, I mean, even though Catholics drink the blood of Christ, it still feels not related to Catholicism. So I kind of wish that there was like another little blurb at the end of the movie of like, and then this ritual was supposed to do like this thing, because I'm so curious about why they did that.
So I definitely, I mean, just having watched the film on my first viewing, I'm very much in the camp of like, there is nothing supernatural going on in this film, that we're just dealing with mental illness coupled with like, you know, town, like a group hysteria of sorts, with the superstition that just runs a wild throughout the entire land. And you know, she's super religious, super superstitious, as is everybody around them. So these practices are just as bizarre as that we find them, and they kind of mirror things that we have grown up on watching films where it's like, that's witchcraft. This is to them just like, you know, just another day.
Right.
But yeah, it just the imagery of like her head on a pike, a decapitated body in a chair, everyone's drinking her blood, and kids and families
like
laughing and screaming and dancing around her, just having a merry old
time. It's
like
so manic and euphoric, and
it's so it's fascinating to me, because if we in modern America, you know, nowadays, and plenty of other places too, but I can only really speak for my surroundings, if we were to witness 1/1000th of this, we would be psychologically scarred.
Oh my God.
Right? But like, I wonder how much of that is based on like learnt behavior and the reactions of your peers.
Oh,
right?
Sure,
And your guardians. Because if everyone's there and they're all just like, this is how things are, and it's a good time, and like she gets her head cut off and no one screams out and it's like, oh my God, this is crazy. And everyone's celebrating it. I don't know. I mean, how much psychological damage? I mean, I think that it would make you much more prone to violence to like just celebrate murder like that. I would think like, well, I mean, what is murder?
I mean,
but there's then the threat of like internal damnation, but then it's like absolved. And I don't know, like, what did they think was going to happen? This is like they're promoting this practice to a degree, like putting this girl's body out there.
Well, sure, because
it's like,
then it's also
what are
like
you doing?
Like, I got that impression when the little girl was, like, watching her get her head cut off, and it's kind of like, that does teach, like, okay, if I ever want to leave this world, I just do this, and then everybody's celebrating and having a great time.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, yeah, I mean, I think people throughout history have celebrated murder, because, I mean, people have been hung, burned at the stake, and there's definitely, like, celebrations surrounding that,
French
right?
Revolution.
Yeah, even after wars and stuff, right? Like, people celebrate that they've killed a ton of people.
Oh my God, yeah.
So, and that still happens today.
Sure.
That's not at all something that doesn't, continue on. But I think, yeah, I mean, we are all products of our environment in very, very major ways. And we can't really separate ourselves from the culture and societies that we grow up in. So, us watching a movie, this kind of reminds me of when we watched, what was that horror movie that was set in, like, the Stone Age that came out, like, this year? Yeah, a similar thing where it's, like, you have almost, like, a hard time relating because you're just, like, that is so outside of, like, what kind of a world I live in.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's interesting, but I think that this movie, like, I feel like everything is worth it to get to the end, to get to the, like, last scene of that party and her decapitation and everything, because it's...
Even if you're not into the rest of the movie.
It's just, well, no, I mean, like, I think you should be into the rest of the movie, but I feel like it's a very rewarding ending because it's so insane and it's so full of meaning and emotion, and it's just a very interesting ending to a very interesting film.
I mean, this is like the precursor to the people from Midsommar.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is like
this also,
them if you fast forward the clock a few hundred years.
Yeah. It also kind of gave me Saint Maud vibes too, of course, which, maybe it's just the religious aspect, but I felt, and I feel like Agnes and Saint Maud, there's some similarities there, especially with the, like, the self, like, what is it?
Oh,
like,
yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
When she hurts herself and...
When she, like, cuts her tongue with thorns
off of, like, a bush.
And it just starts cutting, and then she puts that, she has the thing put in her
hair
neck that she keeps, like, pushing back and forth because the barber, who's supposed to be, like, the doctor,
Dr. Barber,
he's like... pull it back and forth and let it fester and the poison will come out.
So crazy.
Like, that's like bloodletting. Because there's even leeches in this.
Well,
so they are straight up bloodletting.
Yeah, like, so I agree with what you said, though. Like, after the first viewing, I don't think anything supernatural was happening. I think this is just a really intense look at mental illness in a time when people had no understanding about mental illness at all. Yeah. Which is, again, just another, like... We still need so much more information and, like, advocacy for mental health. But, I think that, like, things like the leeches and, like, these, like, folk remedies, for people that weren't super mentally ill, those kind of probably served as, like, placebos and did have some type of effect.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Didn't help her.
It didn't help her because she was suicidal, and, like, you can't necessarily just fix it, like, by magical thinking, I guess. But yeah, it was a very interesting film. This
is just showing us that at the end of the day, a woman just needs a good deep that's what she needed. That's what she needed.
I know we've talked a while, but
if her husband was to give her the business and impregnate her, this would have been a totally different thing.
Sure.
She would have been happy. And
although, who knows, because she also could have experienced postpartum.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, she already had this. I don't think this came out of nowhere. I think that she probably had the disposition, right, for mental illness. And, having a baby and having all the, like, excitement and all the hormones and good feelings when you're pregnant, and then that, like, I think she probably would have killed her kid, and then you know what I mean. But I do think that, yes, like, the catalyst is probably the fact that her husband, like, does not sleep with her at all. And it's really sad because to mention, like, when they're walking back from, like, one day at work together,
Yeah.
and she's kind of, like, she's looking at, like, little fish scales, and she's like, you hear that? Like, that's the woods singing, and she's kind of trying, I just feel like she's trying to really appreciate nature and, like, find beauty in little things and share it with him, and he brushes her off. He's not mean, necessarily, he's just kind of like, we gotta go home. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, he has no interest in connecting with her about that.
Typical man.
Well, no, but I just, that's another thing of, like, maybe if she had actually had a relationship with her husband, like a friendship that was there,
Yeah.
you know, that could have helped things too, which again is just, you know, mental health means having a good support system. And, yes, she does not have that. She doesn't have a good relationship at all with anyone.
I mean, her life sucks.
Yeah, it's awful.
Her mother-in-law is just awful. Her job is terrible. She's, like, told to give out bread, and when she wants to be kind, it's like she can't do that, and told that she's an idiot, and like, you know, and it's just like everything about her life sucks.
Yeah.
And she blames herself and, like, starts punishing herself, and is a masochist, and it's just a really, really sad film and a fantastic one.
Yeah,
this
really
is
cool.
Definitely one of my favorite period piece, darker looks that I've watched. I love stuff like this when done well, and it makes it very thought-provoking. And the fact that this is based on, like, real accounts.
Yeah.
Because the movie's even dedicated to the two women who die in this. Like, supposedly that's their names, too.
Yeah.
And the kids that they killed.
Yeah.
So it's just like, they don't go on some rampage. They're not, you know, they're not some slasher villain or
No,
anything.
they're not like mass murderers or
they just go
spree
and
killers.
grab, you know, it's not like it's nothing, but it's like they just go grab one kid, kill him, and then immediately run over to be absolved.
Crazy.
And then just like, okay, cool. Like, and she has, like, no fear. Why they wrap her in, like, bear skin
I
to
don't know
drag her
what
there on
that
a
is.
horse? But this is all stuff where I'm like, this is just a very well-researched film.
Yeah.
This is like a Robert Eggers movie or something.
It does feel like there was a lot of research.
He's just like a stickler for period accuracy,
Yeah.
right? Whether it was The Lighthouse or The Northman, or we'll see with Nosferatu, and of course The Witch. He just loves being that way, and this reminds me of that. Everything about this film felt period accurate and like some kind of exploration of their practices in, like, these small rural communities out in the outskirts that were practicing these fucking wild rituals and, you know, as I said, practices. It's mind-boggling. But man, to say we're that far removed from this as humans, I don't think we're being honest with ourselves. Like, we're not that far removed from it. It seems crazy to us, but number one, we live in a very, like, you know, we live in a much different society than other places in the world. There are still places that are not far off of this.
Still, yeah. And also, just even in the Western world, we have new superstitions, if you want to call that, new taboos, and, you know, mental health is, like, something that's... Sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, this is better than fucking, you know, walking into a kindergarten and taking an assault rifle to, like,
if you have to pick one
10
of those,
kids.
Yeah. But, I mean, mental health and mental health awareness is still kind of in its, like, infancy. You know, like, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we were, like, everyone was promoting getting a lobotomy. Like, it was, like, lobotomize all of the degenerates of society, you know, and... I mean, homosexuality was considered a mental illness, you know, and so it's still something that people need to talk about, and it's something that it's, like, very clear that humans have dealt with for all time. It's not just a modern invention, you know, it's just that now we have more information about how our brains work and how, you know, our development affects how our brains work and everything, so... I don't know. I think it's super important, and I hope people watch movies like this and, you know, think about it and think about, like, the people in their lives that might be suffering silently or suffering, and you could help them in some way by just connecting. So.
Yeah. In the 1950s, this would have been treated as hysteria.
Yeah. They would have been like,
they
we gotta
locked him up.
masturbate.
Yeah, right.
You just need some
jerk 'em off.
orgasms.
I mean,
that's not
how
bad.
they
That's
treated
like
him.
better than
That's way better than
a
killing a kid and
lobotomy.
then getting
Like, I'd rather
your head
take
cut
that.
off and,
Yeah.
and blood drank.
Yeah,
and,
it's
or
like just-
or lobotomy.
Yeah.
And just take a vibrator to her.
Yeah, that we
That
need
might have fixed
more.
her.
Sure, we prescribe.
See,
more
I say
orgasms.
the girl needs some deep digging, and you're like, no, and then she's like, she just needs to come. It's pretty damn similar to what I said. Pretty damn similar. Mine's like dismissed, and yours is like super similar. So whichever tactic gets you there, whether it's that or a woman or a vibrator or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's how we end this like
That doesn't fix everything.
deep philosophical discussion.
Like,
It ends on
just need more
vibrators
sex.
and yeah.
No, that's definitely not a solution for everything.
It's not a
But
bad
it can
solution.
help. It can help for
It
sure.
can definitely
So,
help. All right, so that's that. We talked way longer than we expected, but a great movie deserves
Yeah.
more discussion, and I hope. I have a feeling a lot of people will find this boring as shit.
Yeah.
But as it sits right now on IMDb, it's at a 7.0.
Oh wow, that's
So
great.
a
That's
lot of
really
people
high.
are liking it, and the people who this is gonna work for,
Oh, it's gonna land
they're
really,
gonna love it.
really well.
They're gonna
yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
the people who like are bored by these kinds of movies are gonna hate it.
Yeah.
And they're gonna, especially with the ending, they're gonna be like, what the hell
If
was
you
that?
didn't like if you watch something like In a Violent Nature, where it's like a lot, but you already said it, like The Witch, like being just in the natural setting too,
Yeah.
and getting a lot of like silent shots of like one person like in nature.
This movie is never
That's like what
once
this is a lot.
boring to me. This
No,
movie
I
has-
didn't think it was boring at all.
This
either.
movie has so much. When we just talked about it, like
know.
every scene is important to me. Even when she like finds the skull in the water and pulls
Yeah,
it up, and
yeah.
they're like, "No, put that away." Like I think there's so much meaning to
Yeah.
everything, and the kids are pulling apart a similar skull at the end of this movie, like pulling the teeth out of it and such. Like I think there's a lot of deep things here for you to analyze and pick apart and you know, filter through and discuss ad nauseum. So
I agree.
great film.
Yeah.
Great
It was
film.
wonderful.
I didn't know where the hell it was going at first, and was kind of like, oh my god, is this going to be like another You're Not Alone or whatever? I was like, I can't do it. But then the more I watched it, I was like, whoa, okay. And then it all, like, it's when it all comes together in the end, that's what put the whole film into perspective for me and made me have a much better appreciation for it. Because, like, I was never bored, but I was always just wondering where the hell we were going. And I was
Yeah.
like, it better be a payoff to this. And with, like, You're Not Alone, there's none. And with this, it's all the payoff I could have wanted. Which then made the whole rest of the movie make perfect sense to me. And it put it all into perspective. And then I was like, I get it. Oh, wow, this is a great film.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah.
That's that. Anything more to say?
Nope. I think that's everything.
All right.
So, bye.
Bye, guys.